The Spitfire came down screaming. Smoke poured from its Rolls-Royce Merlin engine as squadron leader Thomas Hargrove fought the controls, searching desperately for anywhere to land. Below him, Kent burned. Biggin Hill, his home airfield, was nothing but craters and flames. The Luftwaffe had hit it for the sixth time that week. September 1940 had become a month of dying. Hargrove spotted a farm road cutting through golden fields and made his choice. He dropped the landing gear, said a prayer to no one in particular, and brought the wounded fighter down hard. The Spitfire bounced twice, tore through a wooden fence, and finally stopped in a cloud of dust and engine smoke. For a long moment, Hargrove sat motionless in the cockpit, hands still gripping the stick, heart pounding against his ribs that he had survived again. But survival felt like a curse now. His entire squadron was gone. 12 pilots he had trained with, laughed with, flown beside through the hell of Dunkirk, all dead within 2 weeks. The Germans called this period the Adlerangriff, the Eagle attack. Their goal was simple: destroy the Royal Air Force before invading Britain. And they were succeeding. Hargrove climbed out of the cockpit on shaking legs. The September sun felt too warm, too peaceful for a world at war. He looked at his Spitfire, holes in the fuselage, oil leaking onto English soil, propeller bent beyond repair. Another plane lost. Britain had perhaps 300 fighters remaining. Germany had over 1,000. Thought a voice came from behind Stonewall. You want to move away from that. Fuel tank might go. Hargrove turned. An older man in farmer's clothes stood watching him with calm, knowing eyes. He carried no tools, showed no surprise at finding a crash fighter plane in his field. That struck Hargrove as strange. My airfield is destroyed, Hargrove said. I have nowhere to go. The farmer studied him for a long moment. Then he pointed toward a dense line of oak trees at the far edge of his property. Follow me. Stay quiet. They walked in silence through tall grass, still wet with morning dew. Hargrove's flight boots were not made for hiking, and exhaustion pulled at every muscle in his body. He had slept perhaps 4 hours in the last 3 days. Fighter Command was throwing everything it had into the sky, and pilots flew until they dropped. Beyond the trees, Hargrove stopped and stared. Hidden beneath massive camouflage netting stretched between ancient oaks sat 12 Spitfires in perfect condition. Ground crews worked in silence, refueling aircraft, loading ammunition belts, patching bullet holes. Fake haystacks concealed fuel drums. A barn that looked ready to collapse was actually reinforced steel, housing a complete repair workshop. This was a military airfield, disguised as an abandoned farm. "Welcome to Station X7, said a woman's voice. Hargrove turned to find a wing commander approaching, a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and an air of absolute authority. Her uniform bore no name tag, no squadron markings. She extended her hand. "Wing Commander Alice Brennan. You're Thomas Hargrove, 92 Squadron. I read your combat reports. Impressive work over Dunkirk. How do you know who I am? I know every pilot still flying in 11 Group. There aren't many left." She gestured toward the hidden aircraft. "The Germans believe the RAF is finished. Their intelligence says we have fewer than 50 fighters remaining. They're wrong. We have hidden stations like this one across southern England. We launch at night, strike their bombers, and land before dawn. The Luftwaffe never sees where we come from." Hargrove looked at the Spitfires, the silent crews, the elaborate deception. Ghost squadrons. Exactly. Dead men flying dead planes from airfields that don't exist. Brennan's expression hardened. "I need pilots, Hargrove. Good ones. Men who can fight in darkness and keep secrets. I've lost everyone I flew with. Every single one. Then you have nothing left to lose." Brennan stepped closer, her voice dropping. "The Germans think we're broken. They've told Hitler that England will fall by October. But every night, we prove them wrong. Every bomber we shoot down is one less bomb on London. One more day, Britain survives." The farmer, Walter Creedy, Hargrove would later learn, approached quietly. "My son is in a German prison camp," he said. "I hide these planes because every mission flown from my fields might bring him home sooner. We all sacrifice something, pilot. What will you sacrifice?" Hargrove looked up at the sky. Somewhere beyond those clouds, German fighters were hunting. Somewhere, bomber crews were loading explosives meant for British cities. The war felt impossible, endless, already lost. But here, hidden in a farmer's field, 12 Spitfires waited in silence. That night, Hargrove watched the Ghost Squadron launch. One by one, the fighters rolled out from beneath their camouflage, engines rumbling low. No lights, no radio calls, just shadows rising into darkness. Wing Commander Brennan stood beside him. Tomorrow night, you fly with them. Rest while you can. Hargrove nodded slowly. He was not ready. He might never be ready. But the dead men were flying, and perhaps it was time to join them. Champagne corks popped across the officers' mess at Luftwaffe Air Base Wissant, just 20 miles from the English coast. German pilots laughed and toasted their coming victory while gramophones played Wagner. The mood was celebration. According to High Command, the Royal Air Force had been destroyed. Britain would surrender within weeks. The war in the West was nearly won. Major Eric Voss sat alone at a corner table, untouched champagne going flat in his glass. He was 31 years old, a veteran of the Spanish Civil War, credited with 23 aerial victories. His Messerschmitt Bf 109 bore a painted hawk on its nose, his personal emblem. The other pilots called him the Professor because he studied every engagement, analyzed every tactic, questioned every assumption. Tonight, his questions troubled him deeply. 3 days ago, Voss had shot down a Spitfire over Kent. The British pilot had been young, aggressive, skilled, flying with the confidence of a man who had trained extensively and believed in his mission. Before Voss killed him, the Englishman had nearly put 3 rounds through Voss's cockpit. That was not the flying of a defeated Air Force scraping together its last reserves. That was a fighter pilot at the peak of his ability. Where had he come from? Voss raised the question with his commanding officer, Colonel Brandt, who dismissed it with a wave of his cigar. Our intelligence is clear, Eric. The British have perhaps 50 operational fighters remaining. Their airfields are rubble. You shot down one of their last pilots. Be proud. He flew like a man with hundreds of hours in that aircraft. And his Spitfire was factory new. No patches, no repairs. Where do they get a new plane if their industry is destroyed? Brandt's expression cooled. You are suggesting our intelligence is wrong. I am suggesting we should verify before we report victory to the Führer. The conversation ended there. Brandt had already promised Berlin that fighter command would cease to exist by mid-September. His career depended on that promise. He could not afford doubt. That night, Voss flew a patrol over the English Channel. The moon was bright, the sea calm below. His mission was routine: intercept any British aircraft attempting night operations. Intelligence said there would be none. Intelligence was wrong. 8T, 11,000 feet. Something moved beneath him, a shape crossing the moonlight, then another, then a third. Spitfires, flying in formation, climbing east, heading toward the French coast where German bombers were assembling for tomorrow's raids. Voss pushed his throttle forward, but the British fighters vanished into cloud cover before he could engage. By the time he emerged on the other side, the sky was empty. 3 aircraft had appeared from nowhere and disappeared into nothing. He returned to Wissant shaken. He reported the sighting immediately. Brandt laughed at him in front of the other officers. You saw clouds, Eric? Or perhaps birds? The RAF does not fly at night. They cannot. Their pilots are too few and too exhausted. But Voss knew what he had seen. 3 fighters, flying with precision, confident in the darkness. Ghost planes from a ghost air force that supposedly no longer existed. He began his own investigation. For 3 days, he studied reconnaissance photographs of southern England, searching for something the analysts had missed. The photos showed destruction everywhere: cratered runways, burned hangars, wrecked aircraft scattered across famous airfields like Biggin Hill and Kenley. But Voss looked beyond the obvious targets that he examined farmland. Miles of quiet English countryside that no one considered strategic. And slowly, patterns emerged. Roads that led to empty fields, then stopped. Hedgerows arranged in suspiciously perfect rectangles. Haystacks clustered in formations that mirrored aircraft dispersal patterns. Voss requested permission to fly a low-altitude reconnaissance mission over Kent. Brant refused angrily. "You will not embarrass this command with your paranoid fantasies." The invasion planning continues. Operation Sea Lion will commence on schedule. The RAF is finished. That night, alone in his quarters, Voss wrote a letter to his wife, Margarete, in Hamburg. He told her he loved her. He told her he missed their daughter. Then he wrote something he could never send. "I fear we are not winning this war. I fear we are walking into a trap set by an enemy we have underestimated. When we land on English beaches, I believe we will find not a broken nation, but a people ready to fight." He sealed the letter and hid it in his footlocker at dawn. Without orders, without permission, Erich Voss climbed into his Messerschmitt and took off alone. He crossed the channel at wave height to avoid radar, then climbed over the white cliffs of Dover. He flew low across Kent, following the roads that led nowhere, searching the farms that seemed too quiet. Somewhere in those fields, ghosts were hiding, and Voss intended to find them. The sound came first, a distant mechanical drone that made every person at Station X7 freeze. Thomas Hargrove looked up from his breakfast of cold tea and stale bread. The noise grew louder, closer. A single aircraft engine, but not a Merlin. This was the distinctive whine of a Daimler-Benz. German. Wing Commander Brennan was already moving. Everyone underground. Now, leave everything exactly where it is. Ground crews abandoned their work mid-task. Pilots dropped their cups and ran for the concealed bunker beneath the false barn. Hargrove followed, his heart hammering. Above them, the German fighter circled like a hawk studying prey. Through a narrow slit in the bunker wall, Hargrove watched the Messerschmitt. It flew low, impossibly low, perhaps 200 feet above the treetops. The pilot was not passing through. He was searching. The aircraft banked sharply, came around again, slowed almost to stalling speed. Whoever sat in that cockpit suspected something. Brennan crouched beside Hargrove, her face pale but controlled. "If he reports this location, we're finished. Not just the station, all of them. The Germans will realize we've been hiding aircraft across the entire country. They'll hunt down every hidden field. Can we launch? Shoot him down before he gets back. And confirm his suspicions? Even if we kill him, his controllers will know he found something worth dying for." Brennan shook her head. "We stay hidden. We pray." The Messerschmitt dropped lower. Hargrove could see the pilot now, a figure in goggles and leather helmet, head turning constantly as he studied the ground. The camouflage netting hid the Spitfires perfectly from directly above, but from this angle, at this speed, small details became visible. A wheel track in mud. The geometric precision of what should be random haystacks. The absence of animals in fields that belonged to a working farm. Walter Creedy appeared at the bunker entrance. The old farmer's face was set with determination. "What are you doing?" Brennan demanded. "Get underground. He's seen too much. He knows something is wrong." Creedy pulled off his coat, grabbed a pitchfork from the wall. "A farm with no farmer is not a farm. I'll give him something to look at." Before anyone could stop him, Creedy walked out into the open field. Hargrove watched through the slit, barely breathing. The old man strode casually toward the center of the pasture, pitchfork over his shoulder, moving with the unhurried gait of someone who had worked this land for decades. He stopped, looked up at the circling German fighter, and waved his hat. The Messerschmitt came around again, lower now, almost touching the treetops. The pilot was staring directly at Creedy. One man on the ground, one man in the sky. The fate of Britain's secret air force hanging between them. Creedy waved again. He pointed toward his farmhouse, then mimed drinking from a cup. An absurd gesture, inviting the German pilot down for tea. But it was perfect. A terrified civilian would run. A resistance fighter would hide. Only a simple farmer, too old and tired to care about the war thundering overhead, would stand in his field and offer hospitality to the enemy. The Messerschmitt circled once more. Hargrove saw the pilot's head turn, scanning the hedgerows, the barn, the haystacks. Seconds stretched into eternities. Then the German fighter tilted its wings, a pilot salute, and turned south toward the channel in 01 move for 5 full minutes. When Brennan finally emerged from the bunker, her hands were trembling. "That pilot knows," she said quietly. "He didn't report it yet, or we'd have bombers overhead already. But he knows." Hargrove nodded. He had recognized the flying style, precise, methodical, patient. This was not some young glory seeker. This was an experienced hunter who would not give up easily. That evening, intelligence reached Station X-7 by coded radio message. The Luftwaffe was massing for its largest attack yet. Over 1,000 aircraft would strike London the following day, September 15th. Hermann Göring himself had promised Hitler this would be the death blow. After tomorrow, Britain would have no choice but to surrender. Brennan gathered her pilots in the hidden briefing room. 12 faces looked back at her, exhausted and afraid. "Tomorrow, we stop hiding," she said. "Fighter Command is throwing everything into the sky. Every plane that can fly. Every pilot that can fight. That includes us. If we launch in daylight, the Germans will see where we came from," Hargrove said. "Yes, our secret will be exposed. But if we don't launch, London burns and Britain falls." Brennan paused. "We've been ghosts long enough. Tomorrow, we become visible. Tomorrow, we show the enemy what the dead can do." That night, Hargrove walked to the edge of the field where Creedy stood watching stars appear through gaps in the clouds. "Why did you do it?" Hargrove asked. "Risk your life for strangers." Creedy was silent for a long moment. "My boy is in a German camp. Every day, I wonder if he's alive. Every night, I pray he holds on." He turned to face Hargrove. "You fly tomorrow. You fight. And maybe if we win, my son comes home. That's worth any risk." Hargrove had no answer. He simply stood beside the old farmer. Two men watching darkness fall over a country preparing for its greatest battle. September 15th, 1940, dawned clear and bright over southern England. Perfect flying weather. Perfect killing weather. By 9 o'clock, radar stations along the coast began tracking the largest German formation ever assembled over the channel. Wave after wave of bombers, escorted by hundreds of fighters, blackened the sky like a biblical plague. In Berlin, Nazi leaders gathered around radios, waiting for news of Britain's final defeat. Thomas Hargrove sat in his Spitfire cockpit at Station X-7, engine running, watching the camouflage netting being pulled away for the last time. 12 aircraft that had hidden in shadows for weeks were about to announce their existence to the world. Around him, the other pilots of the Ghost Squadron waited in silence. Wing Commander Brennan's voice crackled through the radio. "All flights, this is Mother Hen. You are cleared to launch. Good luck, gentlemen. Make them count." The Spitfires rolled out across the grass field, accelerated, lifted into the morning sun. From farms and hidden strips across Kent, Surrey, and Sussex, similar scenes unfolded. The RAF was not destroyed. It had been waiting at 12,000 feet. Hargrove saw them. German bombers stretching to the horizon in tight formations, their Heinkel and Dornier silhouettes unmistakable against the blue sky. Messerschmitt escorts weaved above and below, hundreds of them, more fighters than Hargrove had ever seen in one place. The scale was overwhelming, but rising to meet them came the Spitfires and Hurricanes of Fighter Command. 300 British aircraft against over 1,000 Germans. Impossible odds, but the defenders had one advantage the enemy did not expect. They were supposed to be dead. The sky erupted into chaos. Hargrove pushed his throttle forward, selected a Dornier bomber, and opened fire. His 8 machine guns tore through the aircraft's wing, and it fell away trailing smoke. He banked hard, found another target, fired again. All around him, aircraft tumbled and burned. Across the battlefield, Major Erich Voss fought with growing horror. He had warned Brandt. He had warned everyone. The RAF was not destroyed. It was everywhere. Spitfires rose from directions that should have been empty, from locations his maps showed as farmland. The ghost planes were real, and they were exacting a terrible price. Through the swirling combat, Voss spotted a Spitfire flying with exceptional skill. Aggressive attacks, clean escapes, economical movements that spoke of hundreds of hours in the cockpit. He recognized the style. This was a pilot like himself, a professional, someone who understood aerial warfare at its deepest level. Their aircraft turned toward each other almost instinctively. Two hunters recognizing a worthy opponent. The duel lasted 3 minutes that felt like hours. Voss and Hargrove twisted through the sky, each trying to gain the killing angle, each blocked by the other's skill. Hargrove's Spitfire could turn tighter. Voss's Messerschmitt could climb faster. They exploited every advantage, countered every move. Then Hargrove made a mistake. A split second of predictability as he pulled out a dive. Voss was there instantly, guns aligned, finger on the trigger. One burst would end it. But Voss hesitated. He thought of the farmer waving in the field. He thought of the letter hidden in his footlocker, the truth he could never speak aloud. He thought of a war built on lies and false promises, and wondered what killing one more brave man would accomplish. Voss tilted his wings, the same salute he had given over the hidden airfield, and turned away. Hargrove watched the German fighter disappear into a cloud bank. He would never understand why he survived that moment. But he did not have time to wonder. More enemies were coming, and London still needed defenders. WWII late afternoon. The battle was over. The Luftwaffe had lost over 60 aircraft. The RAF had lost 26. More importantly, the myth of German invincibility was shattered. Britain would not fall. The invasion would never come. Station X-7 was quiet that evening. 8 of the 12 ghost pilots had returned. For had not. Hargrove stood beside fresh graves dug at the edge of Creedy's field while Brennan spoke the names of the dead. There would be no military honors, no medals, no recognition. These men had died defending secrets that would remain classified for decades. Walter Creedy approached after the brief ceremony. His weathered face showed exhaustion, but also something else, hope. Word came through, he said quietly. Prisoner exchange negotiations. My boy might come home before Christmas. Hargrove nodded. Words felt inadequate. He simply gripped the old farmer's shoulder and let the silence speak. I in France. Eric Voss sat alone in his quarters, writing in his private journal. We lost today. We lost because we believed our own propaganda. We told ourselves the enemy was broken, and we stopped looking for the truth. The British were never finished. They were hiding, waiting, preparing. And when we came for them, they rose from fields we never thought to search. He paused, then added, I let one live today, a pilot who deserved better than to die for my career. Perhaps that makes me a traitor. Perhaps it makes me human. I no longer know the difference. Decades later, long after the war ended, an elderly German tourist visited the Kent countryside. He walked alone through quiet lanes until he found a farm that matched his memories. The camouflage netting was gone, the hidden runway reclaimed by grass. But beneath an ancient oak tree stood a small stone marker, unmarked and forgotten, that a voice spoke behind him. You came back. Eric Voss turned. Thomas Hargrove stood there, gray-haired but unbowed, eyes still carrying the sharp awareness of a fighter pilot. I had to know if it was real, Voss said. Hargrove nodded slowly. It was real. All of it. We were just better at hiding. The two men shook hands beneath the tree where ghosts had once taken flight. Enemies no longer. Just survivors of a war that shaped the world, standing together in a field that history forgot.